Fallout New Vegas is a game with many different weapons. Weapons that can shoot, blast, dismember, and wipe your enemy's very existence from this plane of reality. But today, we won't be using any of those. Instead, we will be using, quite possibly, the worst weapon in any video game ever. The BB gun. First things first, we choose the name Run Run BB Gun for no particular reason other than it sounded cool. Now, while I choose my character's appearance, I'll explain a little about the challenge. I can and will only use a BB gun throughout the entire run. I am not allowed to fire even a single shot from any other weapon. Armors and BB gun variants are all free game though, and you'll see why in a bit. After having a brief aneurysm, it's finally time to choose my stats. I chose 7 in strength, 5 perception, 6 endurance, 4 charisma, 7 intelligence, 7 agility, and 4 luck. I then chose guns, repair, and speech as my tag skills, and then chose small frame and trigger discipline as my perks. Now is the time for my adventure to officially begin as I enter the world for the very first time as a brand new woman. First things first, I need a BB gun, and luckily enough there is one in the house directly in front of the saloon, so I head over there to pick up my new least favorite weapon, along with 12 BBs, buff out, and a teddy bear for good luck. With my weapon in hand, I am now free to leave this one-horse town for good, but first I picked up some cigarettes to smoke on my journey to Vegas. After leaving town, I found and robbed a dead cow. I then met a powder ganger perpetually running into a wall. Then I stole his magazine and dashed past his friends outside. It was now time to make my long and perilous journey to New Vegas. My first stop on the way is through Hidden Valley, so I can go ahead and discover it for later. As I was leaving Hidden Valley, I was attacked by a few rad scorpions, but surely they would be no match for my mighty BB gun. The only problem is my distinct lack of ammo. But that turned out not to be a problem, as they followed me to Sloan and got beaten to death by a guy with a pipe. Leaving Sloan, I went on to discover Neil's shack. I then met and ignored Neil himself. I stole some armor I would need for later, right off the body of a fallen soldier. I then decided to cosplay as Indiana Jones by running from a boulder. I found and robbed another dead cow. And then I used an NCR soldier as a meat shield to protect me from the fiends. On my way to Vegas, I decided to do some Googling, and found there is actually a named variant to the regular BB gun called the Albaline Kid, which doesn't do much more damage, but makes up for it by doing a whole lot of critical damage, making me wish I had thought about my stats a little more, but it's a little late for that now. So it's time to locate and loot the only weapon I'll ever need again, and 100 BBs. On my way back, I ran into a fiend that wanted me to not be alive anymore. So I turned the tables and made him not alive anymore. Unfortunately, his death would not be at the hands of Adam, but instead, he would meet his doom due to the overwhelming annoyance of being shot by 1,000 BBs, which is the slowest and most humiliating death of all. Do you see what I mean now about those critical shots? Now outside Camp McCarran, talking to a caravan guard got me a level up. So this time, I spread all my points into medicine and speech, and then I chose Black Widow as my perk. Once inside McCarran, it was time to board the monorail and finally make my way to the Strip. Once I had finally arrived in New Vegas proper, there was only one place to go. It was time for me to meet Mr. House in the Lucky 38. But first things first, I need some caps, and what better way is there to collect caps in Vegas than robbing a casino? I surely can't think of any. Now, it's time to meet the big man himself, the talking television named Mr. House. After my conversation with Mr. House, I left and met an escort as I entered Freeside, and then I watched as a guy got blown to pieces. I then shot a rat, and I guess that made everyone mad, cause these guys came out of nowhere and began trying to beat my ass and take my things. This is where I found out just how ridiculously hard this challenge would be. As I said before, I can only really do damage when and only when I land a critical hit. And with a luck stat of 4, those come very few and far between. So almost every enemy is 10 times as hard to deal with, especially when you add the fact this entire playthrough is set to the hard difficulty. With all that being said, I'm sure you can imagine just how long, hard, and frustrating this entire run came to be. It also made me realize I would need a lot more ammo. As I said a moment ago, I was going to need a lot more ammo, so I headed over to Mick and Ralph's to buy their entire stock. As I left, a thug tried to bully me out of my lunch money, but his fear of my BB gun was so great he ran away. After my fight in Vegas and realizing how much ammo I would actually need, I decided to use Google again to find the best place to buy more BBs. It turns out Hoover Dam is the best place to go to acquire more of the worst ammo in the game, so I was heading there to stock up. But I had a few things to take care of along the way, so my first stop would be Boulder City. Once in Boulder City, I decided to broker peace between the NCR and the cons. I headed past the front lines to make my way in to speak with Jessup. Unfortunately for me, his verbal judo was much better than mine, so I was going to need a level up before I was getting anywhere. But for once, it was as if Adam himself had bestowed his blessings upon me, for as soon as I exited the conversation, I leveled up. Not once, but twice. I spread my points around a bit and now was a much greater speaker. I easily convinced Jessup to not only release the hostages, but he also gave me a lighter to smoke my cigarettes from earlier. Now that that's over with, I can continue on to the dam, but as I rounded a hill, this man ran to greet me, shower me with gifts, and tell me I am not alone. This is where I officially decided to ally with the NCR. At last, I finally arrived at the dam, entered the visitor center, and went downstairs to speak with Quartermaster Barton. And holy hell, did he have a lot more BBs than I'd ever seen anywhere before. I now know how Charlie felt in the chocolate factory. Finally stocked with ammo, I found myself back on the strip, ready to take out Benny once and for all. Now in the tops, I finally confronted Benny, but I knew my BB gun was basically worthless against him and his goons, so I used all of my womanly charm to convince him to sleep with me. However, little did he know. Wait, have you seen that movie Teeth? Well, just Google it and you'll know how Benny died. Anyway, now the platinum chip is mine. After Benny's untimely death, I got a level up. I put points into guns, medicine, and survival. Then I chose Bloody Mess as my perk because I need all the help I can get. Now that Benny is dead, I informed Swank he would be the new boss. Finally, now that Act 1 is over, I'm headed to the NCR Embassy to begin the second and last act. I spoke with Ambassador Crocker, and he informed me of the boomers. And no, I don't mean old people. These boomers are much worse. They're basically regular boomers, but with missile launchers. On my way to Nellis, I stopped by the Gunrunners to shed some weight by selling all my junk to buy more precious BBs. I then talked to George and took his bet to get some free caps. The road to Nellis was a hard one, paved with plenty of explosions. I found out the hard way when they blasted me halfway to the gates and blew me to pieces. But eventually, I would prevail, and so I have now arrived at the Nellis Air Force Base. I met with the boomer leader who requested that I help her frail-bodied friends with their electronics by killing some giant ants in their generator room, which I thought would be a lot harder than it actually was. I killed a lot of ants that day, but also wasted a lot of ammo, far more than I would have liked to, but it can't be helped now. After killing ants and healing the sick all day, I decided to take a swim with a few friends, but sadly the fun would soon end because I had a plane to raise, and raise it I did. I went back and reported to Loyal, and then told Mother Pearl I had completed all of their tasks, and just like that, I was now sided with the boomers. I was on my way back to the embassy when I decided now might be a good time to take out Mr. House, so I made a quick detour to the Lucky 38. Now in the control room, Mr. House begged me to kill him, but I decided not to until I realized the game won't actually let you leave until he is dead, so I had no choice but to sterilize him as humanely as possible. Now that that's over with, I talked to Crocker again, who immediately sent me on another quest to solve the violence problem they had created in Freeside. To Elvisville I go, where I talked to a prick named Pacer, met the king, and decided to help him out by spying on a bodyguard. And by spying, I mean I shot his face off using VATS. I told the king he now had one less minion to deal with. but he didn't seem to care all that much, because while I was decapitating a man with a BB gun, a few of his friends were getting their asses kicked, so I was now off to investigate. Afterward, I reported back to the king, who had sent me to talk to the strangest looking doctor I've ever seen, but she told me to go talk to someone else, which was rude, so I did. I then told the food lady Julie had sent me, and that was enough for her to explain the situation. It turns out Pacer really is a prick and had been causing a lot of problems with the NCR, so I immediately went to rat him out to the king. But then we were interrupted and told a fight had broken out, so I rushed to the scene to find Pacer cowering like the bitch he is. I stole from his friends and then went to broker peace with the lunch lady and her heavily armed friends. But luckily, it all worked out, so the king thrust his praise upon me by offering me a favor. I then used my favor to negotiate peace between the kings and the NCR. Back at the embassy, I had a hard time finding Crocker, because he wasn't in his office. But I finally found him, woke him up, and he told me of my newest mission. I was now sent to report to the dam, but first I'd leveled up again, so I put my points into completely random stats to try and round everything off a bit. Now at the dam, I spoke with Colonel Moore, who issued me my newest orders. I was to travel to Red Rock Canyon and speak with the Khans. Now at the Khan house, I spoke with Papa Khan himself, who asked me to go and find his crazy daughter. I eventually found her hanging out with a few Deathclaws, waiting on a suitcase full of chems to arrive. But it never did, so she sent me to find it. However, they had already been stolen, so I was going to get them back. I then gave Crazy Hair her chems back and successfully convinced her to break the alliance with Caesar's Legion. I then spoke to more drug dealers, went to rescue another drug dealer, and went back to tell the original drug dealers of my success. I then made Carl look like a bitch, which caused everyone to rush in and beat him to death. Then I was sent to retrieve a ledger from Caesar himself, which I somehow stole even though I was detected. I gave the ledger to Regis and successfully convinced Papa Khan not to side with the Legion. I then reported back to Colonel Moore, who sent me to speak with someone at the embassy. I met with the receptionist, who tasked me with spying on the Omertas to find out what they were planning. I then spoke to Caccino, who was a dick to me, so I stole his journal, which coincidentally had the information I needed. So I convinced him to fess up, and he sent me to speak with Troik. For you see, Troik had a plan to take down the Omertas once and for all. But first, I was told I needed to secure his freedom, and so I did by convincing Big Sal Troik was a liability. Afterward, I reported back to Troik, who had already set the plan in motion. So I then waited a day or two to give Troik time to complete his end of the deal, but apparently, not surprisingly, Troik had failed to do his job, so I was now on the hook for all of his failures. However, this time, Caccino was the one with the plan, so we went upstairs to face our punishment, and the Omertas together as a team. And by team, I mean he did it all by himself. When the fight was finally over, he had come out on top and officially crowned himself as the new king of Gomorrah. Now there was only one faction standing in my way. The Brotherhood must be dealt with, so I stopped off at the gunrunners to lighten my load and buy some more ammo. And with that ammo, I finally took care of the few remaining scorpions from earlier. As I entered the bunker, I had not realized I had already made a fatal and costly mistake. I forgot I was dressed as the Brotherhood's mortal enemy, so I loaded a save and dressed in my sexiest lingerie and hoped the Brotherhood wouldn't immediately shoot on sight. But luckily, this time they let me in. After successfully infiltrating the Brotherhood, I had a bomb strapped to my neck and was told to go deal with the ranger that had been snooping around. So I snuck into his bunker, disguised as an ally, and blew his radio to pieces. After that, I headed back to the bunker, had the elder remove my collar, and immediately began my quest to destroy the Brotherhood forever. I now had to steal 3 separate keycards from high-level Brotherhood personnel and use them to activate the 2 very convenient self-destruct terminals they have for some reason. Once the sequence was active, I hightailed it out of there and watched as the earth shook, signaling the end of the Brotherhood. Now it's time to go back to Hoover Dam to speak with Colonel Moore about beginning my final quest. She had me meet with Ranger Grant to discuss protecting the president during his upcoming visit to the dam. Ready to be done with this already, I swiped the detonator from an engineer, warned Ranger Grant of the assassination attempt, and defused a bomb on the president's vertibird. I then sat back and watched as the president flew off, without exploding this time. I then grew to level 14, put my stats into medicine and speech, chose adamantium skeleton as my perk, and spoke to Colonel Moore for the very last time. It was now the beginning of the end of this miserable playthrough, and Caesar's Legion. So I was now off to speak with General Oliver, who informed me the second battle of Hoover Dam had finally begun. After being teleported to the dam, I wasted no time rushing through the door to steal valuable chems from dead people, which allowed me to escape to the visitor center and out into the open air of war. After dying a dozen or so times trying to cross the dam, I decided to take the smart route and sneak around all the soldiers I could, which ended up working better than I could have ever expected. As I arrived on the Legion's side, I told the Rangers they could buzz off, for I would complete this fight all on my own. I then watched as all of my hard work came together as the boomers dropped fiery hell upon the Legion and the dam, giving me the perfect opportunity to make my way across the final stretch and into the Legate's camp. Now in the camp, I had only one mission remaining. I was to finally confront the Legate himself. So I quickly ran past all the enemies in my way and made my way up to the final hill. I donned Benny's suit for the very last time to give me the few final speech points I needed, and it was time to talk to the savage, bloodthirsty, but surprisingly understanding general of Caesar's army, and I was able to successfully talk him down. There was only one thing left to do, so I met up with General Oliver at the gate and successfully beat Fallout New Vegas with only a BB gun. I'd like to take this time to thank all of you for viewing and point out that I completed this entire playthrough on the hard difficulty, which made everything about 1,000 times harder than it had to be. I still enjoyed doing this, so I hope you all look forward to seeing my next challenge. This new series of videos was of course inspired by Mitten Squad and Senza, two of my favorite YouTubers, so if you enjoyed this video at all, I really hope you'll go check them out. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, a dislike if you didn't, and leave a comment to tell me what you think, or give me new ideas for future challenges. Anyways guys, this has been Captain Rogers with Monsterbird Nation, and I will see you all next time.